Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Adriana. This is episode 3 of my series about my recent download. In the previous video, we talked about ether, the fifth element, how to use it, how it relates to the physical body, to our reality and multidimensionality. And in this video, I want to talk about the Tesseract. I remember mentioning briefly that when we come into this reality, we Tesseract, the inner comes to the outside, and the upper goes to the bottom and the bottom goes to the top. But before I talk about this, let me just explain what the Tesseract is. The Tesseract is a fourth dimensional geometric figure. It's a hypercube. It represents a higher dimensional reality that transcends our three-dimensional understanding. The reason why I'm sharing about the Tesseract is because the previous time when I received the download about opening a portal and I shared the video how to use a dimensional portal was basically how to use the Tesseract, and I didn't know the term Tesseract back then, but now I do. So it helped me to see something with a different perspective and learn what that is, do the research, and you see, okay, that's what we were doing when I was sharing that video. You will see later how to open portals and why it relates to that. Now, in the context of the physical matrix, the Tesseract can be seen as a symbol that is interconnected with multiple dimensions. The Tesseract shows that our reality is a part of a larger structure beyond our perception. Now, talking about things coming into this world when they Tesseract, there is the hermetic principle: as above, so below, as within, so without. The microcosm within reflects to the outside world, the macrocosm outside, and vice versa. The Tesseract, with its interconnectedness with everything else, with its vertices and edges, can be seen as a geometric representation of the fourth dimension. Every part of the Tesseract is connected with every other part. This is symbolizing the unity and the interconnectedness and the independence of all things, and it embodies the idea that changes in one dimension affect all other dimensions. In metaphysical and esoteric traditions, the Tesseract is a representation of higher intelligence, the divine order, and it represents structure. When our physical body comes into this world, our higher selves, our soul, descends into this lower dimension, which is more limited than the higher dimensions. In a way, time slowed down from where we were so that we can experience time in a slowed and repeated pattern, because we'll learn something through time and repetition in this specific kind of school. And what's the best thing? When a higher dimensional being comes into a three-dimensional matrix, loses the memory of self, of where we're coming from, and then we experience all the karmic things and loops, restore the original timeline, graduate certain lessons, help humanity raise the frequency of their individual self and the collective energy into a higher platform, and also freeing some of our friends and family when they were trapped into this third dimensional matrix because of some situations that happened back then. So we descended into this more limited dimension and we're experiencing this shift from one reality to another. It takes a little bit of time because things are governed by cycles, and we're in cycles, creating cycles, experiencing cycles, and those cycles are governed by cosmic laws and principles. We have the ability to take control of those cycles through practices that align us with these cosmic forces. So as I said, the Tesseract is a representation of higher intelligence, and it is a tool for navigating and understanding these cycles. Using the Tesseract as a tool, we can gain insights about how these cycles work, how the nature of time works, and how this relates to who we are and what we're doing here. The Tesseract is basically a bridge between the physical and the non-physical world, offering through its geometry a visual representation of how the higher dimensional spaces interact with our own. The Tesseract can be seen as a representation of the four cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west, that when combined it forms the structure of the Tesseract. This is also connected to the four archangels: Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel. The Tesseract can be seen as a unification of the unified presence of these archangels in multiple dimensions. And each archangel has its own element, relates to the four elements. We touched upon geometry the previous times, but as I said, every time I do what I do, I gain a different and deeper understanding of how things work, and that's how I learned to decode my reality. And then I have like a vocabulary in a way through my experience of how to explain this. When my stream explained that we are actually using the Tesseract, and that's why we showed you the four directions, the four angles, the four corners of the room, and how first we have the inner layer and then we have the outside layer, the inner tree and the outer tree. We were using different types of representation so that I could familiarize myself with how this works. And then we had the Tesseract, the actual shape, the actual meaning, and the actual download of how these things relate to one another. So let's continue with this. The Tesseract structure includes multiple axes that extend into higher dimensions, and that are pathways or channels through which energy and flow connects different planes of existence together. If you've watched the video named Warning, the most important video you will ever watch, Alexander and I and some other scientists and people explain about the axis, and how this connects to our torus energy, the magnetic field, and how this also links to geometry and things related to this video that I'm doing now. When it comes to the four elements, the air, fire, earth, and water are fundamental blocks of reality. These are the Platonic solids, and so the Tesseract can be seen as a higher dimensional representation of these elements, contributing to the creation and sustenance of the universe. The geometry of the Tesseract can be used to access higher dimensions and open portals and wormholes. This can happen through the torus field, which connects all points of light in the sky and within, to the holographic network, opening portals and dimensions. Geometric shapes, including the Tesseract, can be used visually to enhance matter and move objects with the power of focus. The Tesseract can be used as a tool to manipulate energy and access higher dimensional realities. This is what I'm here to explain through simple words and examples through my own personal experience. We are the bridge of the physical world and the non-physical reality. We are actually the Tesseract. Everything has a geometry. We have a geometry. The torus field has a geometry. Frequencies create geometry. Everything vibrates, everything moves. Certain meditative practices that we can use as tools to access those geometries and visualize those geometries, activate within us the blueprint, the codes, the things that resonate our DNA with the DNA of a higher resonance, where we're able then to communicate with our higher intelligence, to learn how to use our physical body, our light body, and all the bodies that are woven into our physical body, and bend time, communicate through the dimensional portal that we are, through our Tesseract, using visualizations and sounds, higher oscillating energies to go through portals, access information and bring it down into the physical dimension, because we're interconnected through our DNA with our higher selves, other dimensional versions of self that are existing in the present but are vibrating on different wavelengths of energy that we explained in the second episode about brain waves and how this connect. This is a form of esoteric language that was used in ancient times, and we are now remembering how to use again. Esoteric languages are composed of symbolic signs and sounds of higher frequency and can be used to commune with celestial beings and realms beyond ordinary perception. The Tesseract can also be linked to our emotions and to something called OCC, which is a model of emotions where it's like a way to explain how situations create certain emotions and are related with our inheritance. And another way to explain this is basically the archetypes and the Jungian psychology model, where it explains how each archetype relates to our emotions and our inheritance. Signs of emotions can be explained through the Tesseract's geometry, because the Tesseract is in everything. The Tesseract is how this world works. Imagine the matrix being created as this Tesseract shape, this hypercube, and everything that comes into this reality comes into the shape of a Tesseract. All those Tesseracts are interconnected with one another because this is the fabric of this creation. I received these downloads and then I went and researched things and wrote things down. When it comes to sacred geometry principles and the Tesseract are intertwined, involving ratio, geometric forms, and symbolism found in nature and ancient traditions. They would say, okay, enough with the knowledge. How can I take action and do something when it comes to this Tesseract? What can I do to access this knowledge? The flow of energy within the torus field, which is basically connected to the ether, which is in a higher dimension than the four elements. We are able to link our torus field with the Tesseract, our energy field with the four directions, with the four elements, with everything, and create like a unit, a unified field of energy through sacred geometry, because everything is geometry and everything operates in geometry, using the Tesseract as an integral part of this geometry in meditation, in visualization, because that's when we don't use the language that can activate different faculty of our brain. So back to heart and brain coherence, if we don't use the voice, the word, which creates other realities, and we can get lost in the creation through the power of our voice. In meditation, we silence the mind and we get into the center. So we manage to feel energy, direct energy, and visualize energy. Energy is sound, it's a frequency, and every frequency and sound has a geometry, everything vibrates. So if we vibrate in different wavelengths, we have the axis of that vibration, of that frequency. Using meditation, we can increase sensory awareness of subtle energy that aligns the physical body with higher energetic centers, higher dimensions, higher different bandwidths of energy, enhancing our connection to the holographic network that links all points of light internally and externally, and opening portals and dimensions. So this is a practical way of doing this. Many sites and ancient structures have been carefully constructed based on these esoteric geometries to focus and direct subtle energies. Now, the Tesseract geometry can harness and direct these energies. So these sites were designed to access subtle energy and higher dimensional realities to deepen and transform an individual and lead them to profound and personal metaphysical evolution. We are heading there. You know, that the ancient cultures were very connected to these intelligences because there were no distractions back then. And then things started to change because of agendas and other beings that were interested in humanity's evolution, or interested in controlling humanity's evolution. So we're back to basics again, where we're relearning what the ancients knew. So by observing and meditating on these natural patterns, it's like a language, it's like a coding that activates within us, and we feel and see deeper with better clarity how these resonates with our physical world, the internal world, and the external world. By having activations, like having aha moments, having puzzle pieces connecting, having your own epiphanies about things. Talking about the torus field earlier, there is links to other shapes, like the flower of life, for example, or the tree of life, which is a part of the flower of life, and Metatron's cube. The flower of life represents the interconnectedness of all life. It underlines the structure of the universe, because when the lines of the flower of life are extended and straightened, they form the Metatron's cube, a complex geometric shape that encompasses the Tesseract. This transformation symbolizes the transition from the organic, flowing patterns of life to the structured, multidimensional realities that are represented in the Tesseract. And so meditating on these shapes, we can gain insights about the nature of creation, the higher dimensional frameworks that govern existence. I use sacred geometry when I light ground and I visualize things. When I listen to dubstep music, this is what I visualize. I visualize the Metatron's cube. The way I received my download about light grounding and how to remember some of my skill sets when it comes to healing and activating and doing things, in like merging my column of light into the physical dimension and doing things, it's basically through sacred geometry. And if you haven't watched the video where I talked about using the dimensional portal, accessing the dimensional portal, they explained to me, like, okay, imagine you are in a room, and then this room has 4 corners, because, like, obviously, and those corners are basically where you can visualize like circles of energy, and this is your access point. So learn how to operate this energy first within your space, to clear your space and say, okay, this is my space, this is where no other energies are allowed to enter my space without my permission, shielding the space. And this is when I learned how to use crystal grids, and I have crystals under my bed as well, and in each corner of the room around the perimeter of my house, to visualize my house and, you know, shield the house. But as you do this more and more every day, you train your mind visually to be able to see this without using like crystals, or they're tools. Crystals are tools. It works in a quantum way because DNA is quantum. And talking about quantum DNA, the Tesseract is related to quantum mechanics. And as you know, quantum mechanics describe the behaviors of particles at the smallest scales. And so the Tesseract structure can be seen as a representation of the quantum field, where particles exist in a state of superposition and entanglement. Because we're quantum entangled with everything else, a unified field of consciousness through our torus field and through everything. Talking about the quantum entanglement and nature of reality, there's something called the Akashic Records. And the Akashic Records library contains past, present, and future events and the knowledge of all those things, and it can be accessed by higher dimensional meditative practices. Now, how this connects to the Tesseract? The Tesseract is the key that unlocks the Akashic Records, in which one can learn more about the tapestry of existence through deep meditative practices, astral traveling, and exploring different realms and dimensions. So as I said earlier, when it comes to quantum entanglement, there is something called the unified field of consciousness. The collective consciousness is interconnected through this shared field, of awareness, and the Tesseract represents the collective consciousness, not only the individual consciousness. So when it comes to engaging with higher dimensional geometries, we can use the collective consciousness and we can expand and shift our awareness toward an interconnected state of being. We can use our body vehicle and access the field that we're part of, aligning with the subtle energies, aligning with the planet, our body vehicle, our instrument, using our instrument to tap into different bandwidths, wavelengths of energy. There's something called the Merkaba, which is a sacred geometric shape that represents the light body, represents the ascension. Meditating again on the geometry, we can activate the light body, and we begin the process of spiritual ascension by aligning with the higher dimensional realities and the divine essence of creation, using brain and heart coherence. And the Tesseract is connected to the left and right brain, and let me explain this really quickly. The divine feminine is an aspect of the divine that embodies nurturing, intuition, and creativity. The Tesseract's multidimensional properties resonate with the interconnected nature of the divine feminine and also the divine masculine. The divine masculine represents the strength, logic, and action. The structure of the Tesseract aligns the qualities of the divine masculine, fostering a divine union of both the feminine and the masculine, the left and the right side. So it's brain synchronization, brain hemisphere synchronization. And this balance is the balance of duality within the self through the universal principle of harmony. Now, this is called alchemy. It's an alchemical process, and alchemy in ancient times was used to transform base materials into gold. And so there is something called the great work, represents the alchemical process, the alchemical transformation and transmutation, and we are transforming our consciousness to achieve a higher state of spiritual purity and enlightenment. The Tesseract's multidimensional structure, it represents the Philosopher's Stone, which is an alchemical substance that grants immortality and enlightenment, and it's symbolizing this spiritual journey. Now, when we talk about ascension and the great work and the path and all the things that we experience, it's a term used in alchemy and esoteric traditions describing the process of achieving spiritual enlightenment. The Tesseract symbolizes the process and the stages of this great work. I will create episode 4 talking about eniology and expanding more into numerology and astrology and how this connects to this ascension process. And expand more into that. So thank you guys for being here. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please give this video a like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next episode.